Hi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we are thrilled to have a truly, truly inspiring guest with us.
Um,
She's faced and overcome many, many different challenges in her life on her way to success and until today. Please help me welcome the amazing Carla Marine. How are you, Carla?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's so good to
Awesome.
be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it, like I was saying before. Now, jumping right into your experiences, I
Mhm.
understand that you've had both an NDE and another spiritual transformative experience.
Yes, both an NDE when I was a child, and then I was
Hmm.
miraculously healed from cancer. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
definitely have a lot of questions for you today.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's go ahead and start with your NDE. If you don't
Mhm.
mind, start on the day that it happened, or if we need like a backstory.
I was on my family's ranch. I was 8 years old, and I was with my youngest sister, Bonnie, and we were out playing. And one of my sisters hollered at us to go outside or go inside. It was time to eat. And um, it was in the spring, so the clouds were puffy and the sky was blue, and it was a perfect day, and I didn't want to go in. So I had it in my head to take one more round and do something super fun. And so our house was on the top of a hill, and my dad's shop, he owned a construction company, so like there was a big barn, and then there was a garage next to it, and that's where he kept all of his shed or his tool sheds. And so like what I would do is I would start on the top of the hill, and I'd go as fast as I could, and I would like jump this little bump. It's called a water lip. It keeps the water from going into the shop and when it rains. And there was like a divot in out of it, and I thought that was a perfect ramp because that's what you think when you're like 8 years old, And so I did. I went as fast and as hard as I could down that hill, and I hit that water lip, and my bike stopped, and I went head over heels over the handlebars, and that's when it that's when it started. I just didn't know. So like the moment that I like lifted off the bike and you have that sensation of flying, my entire awareness just opened up. And it's like I took in everything at one time, and I had just enough to register that. And then it's like a bubble of awareness was around me. And when I hit the ground, it's like I heard myself hit the ground. I didn't feel myself. I did feel it, but it wasn't so personal. It was like it was distanced. And I remember my sweet little voice kind of sighing and then crumbling underneath the weight of my own body and then blacking out. And I woke up on my back, and I remember seeing the garage door blinding light, like a rectangle blinding light, and then everything else around me was dark, was black. And I kind of did a scan, and I realized that I couldn't move as I was kind of coming to. And so of course you panic. And I looked back at the rectangle, and there was a figure there, and I couldn't tell it was male or female. It was blurry, like you were kind of coming still kind of coming into like consciousness almost. And so I thought it was my sister, my youngest sister. So I was like, I need you to go get mom and dad. I need help. And they wouldn't move. And so of course you get upset, and I was like, mom and dad are going to be so mad at you. I got really desperate. You're going to be in so much trouble. I really need help. I can't move. Something's really wrong. And as part of me, because I still had the distance, because it wasn't just like I couldn't move. It felt as if I was trapped in this body, like a corpse, or that could not move, that just was not responsive. And so as I was taking that in, and the fact that this person or my sister wasn't doing anything to help me, it's like my awareness from the back end started taking things in. Like it's I started to notice that the darkness around the garage light wasn't just like dark. It wasn't like the lights were turned off. I focused more on it with my eyes, and of course I could speak, but the rest of me couldn't move. And so the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it had vastness. It resembled and turned into. I realized it was space, like when you look up at the stars, but like a starless space, right? And there was no solidity to it. Although what I felt laying upon was as solid as a cement floor. And as I took that and my eyes went right back to the light, and I remember I should have seen the rolling hills in the background. I was raised on a ranch, obviously, the rolling hills in the background, the blue sky and the puffy clouds and the barn and the cattle trailers, and I couldn't see any of that. And then it dawned on me that the light that was coming in from that rectangle that I thought was the garage door was actually light and life itself. And the realization that where I thought I was at the ranch, had transformed into this unseen reality that we have, where like everything just changes. And I knew that this place where I'd gone was the space between light and dark, life and death. And I was just in the space between. And so as I was registering this, that reality set in, and things like just everything shifted. And I looked back at that figure and I said, am I dying? Am I dead? Is this heaven? And as if in a response, this overwhelming peace like broke within me, like deep, deep within me. I call it my dwelling place. And it just overwhelmed me. And that was all I could know. And as I was realizing that, one, this had always been in me, and two, it's this wellspring of love, fear completely dissipated. It's like I couldn't even be in that space anymore. And so there was no fear, no worry, no anxiety, nothing. And as I realized that, and I just kind of soaked that in and allowed that to become just one with me, to really accept it, I remember looking back at that figure, and instead of speaking with my voice, I spoke with my inner voice to that figure. And I said, oh, what happened was, when I was in that reality, it's as if me looking at that figure, I heard something within. That's what happened. I responded to it. I heard something within. It was like, because this is when I discovered I had an inner voice. It said, "Are you ready?" And I intuited that it meant, "Am I ready just to go on?" And I had this like very short little like life review. I was like, "Oh, my dogs and cats are okay, and my bike's fine, and my family's okay." And I, within my inner voice, answered that voice from that figure, and I said, "Yes, I am." And when that happened, it's like my entirety, like just life and light and me, myself, went into that dwelling place of love inside of me. And as I fell, like my whole body, mind, soul, spirit fell into that place, it's like I crossed this barrier. Like there was no fear. There was no ability to where fear could exist, because over here was nothing but the existence of love, pure love itself on the other side. And then I crossed this line where I felt where love or fear could exist. And I know now that was me going back into my body. And I remember waking up hours later, and I'm speaking to my mother like I'm speaking to you. And I stop and I look at her. I'm like, what happened? Where am I? How did I get here? And I had no recollection of how any of those events occurred, but she got frustrated because she just couldn't understand why I wasn't understanding. And she left, and I had a mirror in my hand, and I could see this part of my face, like the round little chubby part of my face, at 8 years old, And I remember tilting it. And as I tilted it, I was in shock, because it was as if someone cut an orange or a large lemon in half and put it on like a second grader's head. And this entire section of my head was swollen out, like protruding from my head, and it looked awful. And of course I was freaking out. And then my mother then took me to the hospital because she's like, so wait, something's obviously wrong. And the doctor was livid. He was like, she could have died. Like, she shouldn't be here, but she like, there's no reason she should be here. Like this is even her head swelling out. He was like, what could have saved her is the fact it swelled out, not in, but still he was like, you should never have waited, kind of thing. There's just no reason why she's here. And so after that day, that near death experience, I was completely different from honestly anything I would ever know. So
Thank you so, so much again for sharing that experience with us and all those
yeah.
details. Now, going back to your experience, coming back, did you
Yeah.
notice any like abilities that you didn't have before after your NDE?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So it wasn't immediate.
Mhm.
I knew something had changed, something was different. So I saw the world, computed the world a bit differently. So I questioned everything. Like I had this curiosity, but also this that love, that wellspring never went away. It was wonderful, it was beautiful, but people didn't know how to take me. And so but as far as abilities go, I have four major experiences, and I share this in my book. And it's the four times that love courted me, and that's the only way I can describe it. But I had four premonitions of deaths, and they all came true. So the first time was when I was um, in the barn, and there was a cow. She was giving birth, and I came upon it in the situation, and something told me there was something really wrong, and I was trying to get the attention of the vet, but it wasn't like, okay, it wasn't like, okay, well, maybe she's having trouble. So like there was a cow giving birth, and she'd already had one, right? And I was drawn to her, and I was looking at her, and I realized there, like, that space within, that voice that I heard, that I connected with in my NDE, was like speaking to me, and it was wordlessly saying there's something wrong. Like, if she doesn't get help, she's gonna die. And so I went to the vet and I pleaded and whatnot with them, and I knew if you didn't help her, like something really bad was going to happen. And so um anyway, the next day she had actually passed with two more babies in her. The other three times were when it was maybe a year and a half after that, or a year after that, not very long at all. I was on my grandmother's stairs, and it was a family reunion, and we have a very large family. Anyway, long story short, I was going down the stairs of my grandmother's house, and she has wood stairs, and they're very steep. I remember like stepping on something, and it rolled out from underneath of me, and I flipped up in the air, and my spine was curved, and I landed on the stairs. And immediately, it wasn't just like my wind was knocked out of me. I knew something had happened. Something was really, really wrong. And because it was an agonizing pain from my spinal cord. And it was like that day in the NDE when I knew I was dead, like there was something really wrong. It came back to me. And as I like closed my eyes and I was trying to move and take everything in, that voice, that peace, that presence came back to me, and it said, breathe into the pain. And of course, there was a shock that it came back, and I remembered that it was related to the NDE and things like that, but I wasn't overwhelmed. I trusted it because I mean, it was the same voice that got me through that NDE. So I was like, okay, absolutely. So I started breathing into pain, and it was like overwhelming at first. It was like a floodgate, but it's almost like the more I breathed into it, the more it moved in me with purpose. And all of a sudden, I remember this white light beaming from that spot on my back and my spine, and I was just taken up by it. And the next thing I knew, I had been swept up in my sister's arms, and I was on the couch. And I was kind of coming to after that sensation, that experience, because it was so overwhelming. I didn't even register what was going on inside of me. And I remember coming to and realizing I was in her arms, and she looked at me. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But there was like, it is like everything else had dissipated, and except for this like dull thudding like throb right there. And didn't hurt. It was just almost like a reminder. It was like, okay, something was there, but it wasn't there anymore. And I shouldn't feel this good after that. And I knew something was wrong, but I was like, okay, I just kind of went with it. Right. And then, the next 3 times, this all happened before I graduated high school, but the next time was I was in middle school, and my grandfather had gotten sick with cancer, and he had actually died maybe 6 months before Thanksgiving, where I'm talking about and my grandmother was at our house. So grandpa had died. We were very close because I helped take care of him before he passed. And my grandmother and I, again, in response, got very close too. And so grandma was at our family ranch, and we had eaten a huge dinner because like we have a ton of family, and someone had brought chocolate cake donuts, and homegirl took them and ate them all in the bathroom. And I was sick as I was so sick. My stomach hurt so badly. And for some reason, I just couldn't get rid of it. And so I just was in agony on the couch. And it was like, late afternoon. And I kind of remember people started milling around, and I remember goodbyes being said, and I realized it was my grandmother, and I was like, oh, I can't get up because it really was just terrible. And I decided just to kind of stay on the couch and in my misery. So but all of a sudden, this voice inside, like an actual audible voice inside of me, said, as clear as I'm speaking to you, what if this is your grandmother's last Thanksgiving? And not only was I in shock that I heard that, my sickness went away, like immediately. And I jumped off of the couch, ran to my grandmother, hugged her in my arms, and I said, I love you, Grandma. I love you so much. I hope you know that. And she said, I love you too, baby. And she left, and my father found her the next day. She had passed in her sleep very peacefully. But I got that goodbye. And that was kind of when I started to be like, oh, maybe this is something, kind of thing. The second one was, I was in junior high, and that day I wasn't feeling well either. I was math class, first class of the day, and I'm sure that they do this because we'll have more attention span for math, but I was just like, who wants to go to math class at 8? And so I remember getting to class, and I just didn't feel well. It wasn't necessarily like I was sick to my stomach. It just, there was something wrong or off. I just knew it. And I remember getting to my seat, throwing my bag on the floor, just kind of putting my hands on my head like this. And I could hear the kids milling in, and my seatmate next to me like sat down and tried to say hi, and I was like, ooh, and with my head down, I was trying to breathe because I'd found breath work naturally. I was trying to calm myself down. I was trying to reconnect with that space inside. And it was as if the world stopped, and I heard the ring of my teacher's phone. And like literally, I could hear, I was so tuned in. I could hear the click of the receiver. I could hear the zip of the cord as she, against the desk, as she raised it to her ear. I could hear the click on her earring as the receiver touched her ear. And a voice, again, as audible as you and I are speaking, it said, it's Jenny. And my head snapped up, and I looked at my teacher's face, and I knew. Like her expression, her face had fallen, her face was ash, and it was just, I knew something was wrong. And so she said, okay. And she hung up the phone, and she told the class, we have to, like, I come on in to sit down, and she had something to tell us. And She ended up saying, I'm sorry to tell you this, I'm sorry to tell you this, but on the way to school, Jenny had had an accident and she had died. And if you need to go to talk to someone, go to the counselor right now. And because we were from a small community, like 500 people, like we knew everyone. And this Jenny had been my sister's best friend. Like, and so I knew the Jenny they were talking about before she said it was Jenny. And so the shock of that was lasted past that class and into the next. And I ended up, the teacher noticed and sent me to the counselor. And I remember looking at the counselor's office and all of the girls in there that were weeping for Jenny. They were older, like they knew her more. Like she was only 2 years older than me, but like I realized that yes, I grieved for Jenny and I was so, so sad because she was a family friend, but like I am not just grieving, I am trying to process the fact that I am hearing an audible voice of what people would call God or spirit or something that's telling me all of these things. And I can't tell anyone because I know that they're going to think that I am absolutely crazy. And so, because it wasn't a safe place anyway, like I was, like I said, I was bullied and I didn't fit in anyway. And this was just going to be the one thing that tipped it over, right? And so I remember walking away and dealing with it the only way I could and going back to that place, back to what I would call the divine or love at the time. And trying to process it the best I could on my own. And the very last time that I had a gifting hit me was I was 16 and I was at our family ranch and my sisters are much older than me. There was two families and my sisters like 16, 17 years older than me. And so, I mean, could be my mother. And so, they had married and one of them had married, the slow talking, slow moving cowboy from Wyoming. And he had a lot of patience for a very energetic, enthusiastic little me. And so we'd kind of bonded and over horses and roping and things. And so he'd become my brother in that, like, and truly not just a brother in life, truly a brother. And so we were at the ranch and my mother was downstairs with me and Terrence is his name, my brother-in-law that I was so close with. And we were called up to dinner and I remember my mother going first. And of course, Terrence he's a gentleman, let you go first. And I had hit the third step on the way up the stairs and I go into a full on vision, like waking vision, stopped me in my tracks. And I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I know for a fact I came out of that knowing Terrence was going to die young. And I forgot where I was. I just stood there still until Terrence kind of poked at me. He was like, did you miss a step? Kind of thing, And I remember turning around, shoving him down the stairs and throwing my arms around him and saying, Terrence, I love you so much. I love you. I hope you know that. You've always been a brother to me. You are my safe person. Thank you for being my brother. Thank you for choosing to love me like a sister. And that haunted me for years. Like it was this bittersweet knowing that like I had that understanding and it came from that place that over and over and over again had been proven right with its understanding and knowledge and voice. And so it was 5 years later when I was in college and I went through something awful I wouldn't wish upon anyone. And it was after that when Terrence really helped me get through that Terrence died a week before his 40th, or a couple weeks before his 40th. And he died in a plane crash or a helicopter crash. And I knew that I had been given those years and being able to, just like me and my grandmother in that opportunity, and then Terrence, I just knew I was given those moments, those years with him to cherish. And that's why when I did lose him, people were like, Kara, why are you not, they knew how close we were. And I was like, I know where he's at. And I know it's absolute love and perfection. And there could be no fear, no worry, no anxiety. He is so, so much better where he is. And I cannot wait to see him again. and they couldn't understand, they could not process how I could approach it like that. And so I would say those are the the four that really established, one, my relationship with the divine, or what I would call love, and knowing the power within, and knowing that there are giftings outside of what people would talk about, or even maybe even believe in. So, and the others came. The other one came later in life.
That is amazing. Thank you again so much for sharing those.
Very
So I
welcome.
do have questions also
Mhm.
regarding your these experiences as well.
Yeah.
Now, it is not very common, first of all, for an 8-year-old to have a near-death experience, number one,
Mm. Hmm.
let alone being able to, in a way, know what's going to happen next, like being able to premonitions.
Yeah.
So many people that have had certain things happen and all of a sudden are able to know what's going to happen next, whether through a dream or through a voice or just an inner knowing.
Yeah.
Many people try to kind of like stop what's going to happen as opposed to let things flow.
Oh yeah.
How did you at such a young age learn how to maneuver through that situation and let things happen the way they're supposed to?
I absolutely claim it to be my near death experience, and experiencing love itself,
Mhm.
because I don't separate. Death has never been a fear for me ever since that day.
Mhm.
And the reason because I've approached it, it's not like I haven't had to deal with it. It wasn't like it erased it totally, but it was almost like I I had to come to terms with, I knew what was on the other side. I knew what lived inside of me. And I knew that no matter what I faced, whether it's losing my brother or my grandmother, or like all of this loss, I knew where they were going. I knew the love that lasted, that stayed there. And as much as I want them here with me, I want them, or wanted them, I it was almost like I could let them go into love's hands, like to that death wasn't a foe, it was a friend, and that I could absolutely embrace. Um, I know that when I face death, I'm going to embrace it like a friend. Like it's going to be one of the most beautiful moments, because it's the gateway to where pure love exists. Like I can have that love now, but on the other side, I get to enjoy it with every single one of my loved ones unhindered. And so I would honestly, I would probably say it's because my near death experience was so pure and unadulterated, and wasn't distracted by so many things. I died. I experienced love. I knew its presence, and that presence never left me. It proved itself over and over again. And so I honestly think it was because I had a near death experience so young, my faith was solidified so quickly and so strongly that, although it wasn't easy, and I still had to deal with human emotions, right? But it was much, I learned sooner in life how to deal with that on a much deeper level. I hope that answers you.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much.
Of course.
Now, speaking of faith and solidifying your faith, you mentioned that in another interview that you have a religious background or you were raised in a religious background.
Mm-hmm.
How were you able to integrate your experience, the near death experience, these things that were happening that you were able to, like premonitions? Um, how were you able to come into peace and merge both together? And how did your family receive and process your near death experience?
So excuse me, I couldn't tell them. There was no way I could do that. So I came from a very staunchly religious background. It was very, uh, we'll just call it, like, it was very narcissistic, kind of like, uh, atmosphere where, you couldn't deviate from something. You did not talk about like gifts, or you did not talk about, premonitions or sight, or, healing, because that was not some, that was and me being the child that I was the scapegoat. So like anything outside of what I was allowed like to be, there was just no way that I could do that. And I knew that again, that was just an insight that I had very young, whether it was the wisdom from the new experience or just, survival. And so, so that's how my family approached it. But you asked what else. I want to make sure I answer it specifically.
So how did you merge both experiences together? And
Oh,
eventually, I wanted to basically add another question.
yeah.
How did you decide to come out of the closet, pretty much spiritually speaking, to your family and your
Yeah.
friends?
Yeah. So I found wisdom that resonated with the truth within me in the Christian Bible. And I found a lot in the Psalms and the Proverbs. And so I clung to those. And I could not, because my relationship with the divine was so close and so intimate and so tangible, like it was like tangible, right? Like felt it, seen it, like they were talking to me, kind of thing. And so I um, knew it was real, and I could associate what I knew to be spirit as the Holy Spirit. And I knew it was real. There were truths in this religion that spoke to me and were real. They were honest. Like, and later on, like there were verses that I used in my healing process of cancer. So it's almost like the love within me could recognize truth in this, and I clung to those truths, and that became my relationship with the divine. That became my faith. And so that's really kind of how I associated it with kind of bridged that gap, because I never really understood how someone could talk about a God but so distant, like in a place called like heaven. Not that I don't believe that can be associated from like by other people. Like I believe that the universe or love speaks to us, and however we relate to them. Like any religion, you can find truth. You can find love in any religion. I mean love. I mean spirit, Gaia, God, like whatever it is that holds this entire universe together. Whatever you want to call that, that's what I call love. And so, and man, truth is truth. And so, I never ended up telling them, at all. Like I wrote my book and I put it out there, and I'm sure that kind of got to them, and, um, 6 ways of separation. But, I tried once and it did not go over well. And so I just, like I said, again, it didn't, I was not going to do that again. Again, like for self-preservation. And I have no ill will towards them. It's just the spirit spoke to them in a very different way, and that's just their way, and that's how they function. And I wish the best for them. But like, I could not resonate with what they would call love, because their brokenness was not love. It was something I knew not to be. And so I just could not accept their religion. And unfortunately, that's just, I'm very alone. And
All right. I can definitely understand where you're coming from. Me coming from a very religious background, so I've never had an NDE at all yet, thank you God.
oh yeah,
Um, but I've had spiritual experiences to where I've seen the figures too.
really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I
and
love
the
this for
fun
you.
yeah, and it was interesting because that happened to me back in 2012, and this type of conversations were not as common or as well
Mm-mm.
accepted as it is now. So
Yep.
everyone thought I was going crazy. But yeah, it can be a very lonely world when your family, and again, they mean well because they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
who am I to judge my family for not being open to this? I believe that whenever they're ready for that, that conversation is going to happen. Plain
Yeah.
and simple. And same for you. Same for you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, on that tone, let's switch gears to your healing experience and battling cancer. So
Yes.
you have the mic.
All right. So my story starts when it comes to my healing in 2015. I had after high school, and I went on this journey with the divine. I Oddly enough, I was a professional model and singer, and I'd gone and done all sorts of things, and I found favor with the divine. Like, it was absolutely incredible. Like, but oddly enough, right when I was supposed to peak, I was called out by another vision, and so I ended up in Fort Worth, Texas, in 2015, and I was going to start over completely, like new life. I was going to start a business and whatnot. And so I remember it was, oh, we were just going out with my friends, and like I was getting ready, and I was like buttoning up the front clasp on my bra, and I remember my knuckles on my left hand hitting something, and it was hard, and so of course your like mind races, and because it was on the very corner edge of my left cleavage, and I was like, I'm 32. I mean that's nonsense, right? Like, my parents don't have cancer. Like, yeah, like there's cancer in the family, but like whatever. It was that next spring in 2016 that I got a phone call from my estranged mother, and she told me that she has the same cancer that killed her mother at her age, ovarian cancer, and that I was supposed to get tested for these gene mutations because she has it. That gene mutation that gives you like the 70% chance of getting, or 75% chance of getting all the killer cancers, which are the estrogen-based cancers. And I, of course, didn't. And it was the fall of that same year in 2016, my father called me, my estranged father called me and told me that he too had cancer. Well, his father died of cancer, and his sister died of cancer too. And he has two kinds of cancer. And so it it took months, but my friends finally got me to do the gene mutation and testing, and I came back positive that I have the same gene mutation of like 70% chance at even at 32. Like, that's before you're at the age of 70, and after that it's imminent. So you have a 70% chance of before you're 70, and then after that it's imminent. It's just, and so I would find myself just spiraling. And again, those same friends were like, Car, you got to go in. And so a week before my 33rd birthday, I end up going in and to one of the best cancer clinics in Fort Worth, Texas. And at the time, my emotional state was like the highest anxiety you could possibly have. It literally felt like my self, my essence was just packed, and it was so full it was like I was going to break, it was going to bust, and I wish I would have. Like, it was like I could not I was like just barely controlling it. So I'm in this room, and I am talking to this assistant, and she's young, she's got her hair in a ponytail, and she's like asking me these questions that I've already answered like 3 times about my family's cancer and their deaths and their treatments and all of these things. And the nurse comes over, and she lays me back, and she she wiggles herself between on my left between the wall and the table, and I realized, like, I noticed that she is like 9 months pregnant. Like, she is beaming, like, just like motherly grace is just almost annoying. So I'm like, I just want to get through this. And she's like, and as sweetly as she could, she's like, okay, we're gonna start. And so she lifts my arm up, opens my gown, and then she starts the examination as gently as she can without being unthorough. And so she starts asking me questions and whatnot, and I'm staring at the ceiling, trying to get through it. And I'm doing okay until she hits a spot on my left cleavage, and my hand shoots up, and I grab both of her arms or her wrists as hard as I, probably too hard. I grabbed her too hard, and I snap at her and I say, ouch, that hurts. Don't do that again. And she says nothing. She looks at the assistant. The assistant leaves the room, and she wiggles her hands free, covers me back up, puts both of her hands on my left thigh, and asks me, so where are you from again? And I look at her as I'm trying to process everything, and I'm not answering her because I'm like, what in the world? And I have only a few moments when a tall, thin mechanical doctor flies into the room, and she introduces herself. She goes around the table, displaces the nurse and takes her place to start the examination herself. The nurse goes around the table immediately to my right side, sidles up as like close as she can, and she just like sits there and just stares at me like that. And like the doctor like looks over her glasses at the nurse and then like lifts my arm and my gown and then starts the examination again with her bony, unrelenting fingers. Like it was just it was just so uncomfortable every time she touched me. Like it just felt like I was going to punch her in the face. And on top of all that, she asked me again, like the questions about my family history. And I was like gritting my teeth and I'm like answering her, trying to stare at the ceiling. And I'm barely getting through it. And she hits that same spot that that nurse did. And I try to lift her hands off of me and they will not move. And I snap at her and I said, ouch, that hurts. Do not do that again. And she stares at me and she pushes harder and around something that feels like a screwdriver digging into my rib cage. Like it feels like like someone is stabbing me with a screwdriver. Like I cannot, that's the only way to describe it. And like I'm gritting my teeth and I'm trying so hard not to like absolutely rage on this doctor. And she finally finishes the examination and she finds something on the other side. And she starts this conversation that I am not present for until she says bilateral breast cancer. And like that phrase filters through the haze that I'm in. Like the rage and the anxiety. And I don't remember anything of the conversation after that, other than there was talk of chemo and radiation and double mastectomy and an emergency lumpectomy that they couldn't get me in for until next Monday. So this was a Thursday and I had 3 days. They couldn't get me in for an emergency lumpectomy until Monday. And I remember nothing until the nurse waddles back up to my left side. The doctor and the assistant had left and she had stayed and she had something in her hand. She's like, I'd like to show you something. And of course I said nothing. And she takes, it was a false breast and she takes my fingers like this and she places it on the false breast with hers on top. And she says, she presses down. And what I feel are like pea-sized or larger misshapen lumps. And like they're hard, right? And she says, these are lumps we find, we take out, we send off, and almost always come back benign. They're just lumps that you have. And she takes a visible breath. She quarter turns that false breast. She places my hands back on top with hers on mine. And then she presses down and I immediately recoil. This lump that I felt, it hurt my fingertips. It was the size of my top digit of my pinky finger ground to a point, hard as stone. And I just look at her without saying anything. But you can tell like the expression on my face. And she takes only a second and she says, these are the lumps that we find, we take out, we send off, and almost always come back as breast cancer. And she just looks down. She opens my gown, takes both of my fingers, places them on that left side with the doctor, and she found something. And she presses down. And it not only hurt to my fingertips, but it shot pains through my body, my bones, and my soul that I could not deny anymore. And I just broke. I knew what she was doing. And I knew a truth that and so I laid there on the table and I just wept. And she covered me back up and she waited with me until I stopped crying. And she told me that she was going to wait for me outside of the room. And she did. And she walked me to the front. And She gave me a hug, the sweet thing. And she said, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And the next day was Friday. And I had called two of my guy friends that were like brothers to me. And they came to my house and I told them everything. I told them about my family history. I told them about um, everything that happened to my family and what I was facing and what I was going to need for help and um, whatnot. And I hadn't really decided what I was going to do or whatnot. So anyhow, they waited very patiently, but it was like a visual patience. They were waiting for me to like end what I was saying. And when I was done, they looked at me. They said, "Thank you, Kara, for sharing that. But we don't accept that because what we're going to do is we're going to lay our hands on you and we'll heal you and we're going to pray and heal you." I didn't want to deny their love. And so like I let them, right? And so what was a beautiful experience, I felt so much closer to them afterwards, but like I just didn't feel anything. And but I thanked them when they left. And I woke up the next day and I called everyone I knew. It was dark by the time I was done on Saturday, and I was just spent. And I was dog sitting at the time. This wonderful family, I loved them so much. Like they like were my regulars, and they had three very wonderful, very energetic dogs. And so I didn't have a bike at the time, or I didn't have a car at the time, so I biked to the house, and I parked the bike, and I was walking up the front steps. And it's like the dogs knew. It's like I walk in and I close the door, and not one of them make a peep. They're sitting there. And the only sound I hear are the pads of my bare feet and the click of their nails on the hardwood floor as I walk around down into the guest room of the house where I was staying. And two dogs walk in. They take their place on the floor and one on the bed where she always sleeps next to me. And I look at that bed and I just can't even imagine. Even as exhausted as I was, I couldn't imagine sleeping. And so I sit on the edge of the bed and I look out the floor to ceiling wall window at this moonlit pool area with dark, like slate blue and black shadows and the water and the stone, and it's beautiful. And normally that would bring me such solace and peace. I just sat there in silence for I don't know how long in that room. And eventually that silence turned into this stillness. And this stillness is something that I had known as a kid. And anytime I needed the divine to be there to like really get me through something, I would go in my room alone, or I'd go in nature and just be there. And I would either sit there in stillness, or like talk and pray or shout or sing, whatever I needed to do to like just get it out, right? But a lot of times I would find myself just in stillness when it was really, really overwhelming. And that time in that room, that stillness settled and shifted the atmosphere in the room. And I found myself speaking with the divine. And in a way, I hadn't spoken to the divine in a long time. And I remember saying, going into that place, that stillness, that dwelling place. And I remember saying, I know you're good. You have proven yourself too many times in my life for me to deny that. And you know what I face. And I know what's happened with my family, and I know the road that I would have to walk down, and I just don't want to. And whatever happens with this, I'm just going to let it take me, because I've had a beautiful life. I know you speaking to love so well, and I've had favor in modeling and singing. I've done everything I wanted to do. I've lived this beautiful life. of freedom, with very few regrets. And I just don't want to do this. I'm just okay with going back to you. And after I said that and really kind of sat with that for a little bit longer, it's like this churning. I wasn't able to really put it into words until I like really started talking about this, but like it was like this stirring inside of me, and it's almost like an unrest. And a lot of times when that happened, I was like, I needed to ask questions, I need to work it out, right? And I was like, okay, well, I already told you what I was going through, and I know what I'm doing, and I know, like, we've already worked through this. What is this? And so anyway, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and it like built to a fever pitch to where I was so mad that I wasn't getting answers, and I was asking questions, and I'd already thought through. I was like, listen, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you're trying to tell me. I don't know what this is. Like, I know where I am. I know what my brothers have like, I know what my brothers have done for me. I know what happened to my family. Like, I have made my decision. Like, what else do you want from me? If there's something else you want me to do, you have to tell me. You have to show up. You have to be like tangibly here. You have to tell me what to do. And like magic, like 2 Bible verses of all things drop into my understanding, and I am not happy about it because like I said, I left religion alone. I was like, I don't want to like, but the first one was faith like a child, so logically I'm like, okay, yes, thank you, got that, whatever. And the second one though, like, floored me. I um it was the story in the Bible when people who were too poor or too destitute to get help would go before a church and have them lay hands on people and pray. And I'm like, I did that. Like, what? I thought immediately. I was like, I misunderstood. Like, it's too much stress. I was like, I misunderstood. So I sat there and I was like, okay, you're gonna try that again because I didn't hear you right. And so I sat there for like a while, like, okay, so let's get this, let's change this up. And it never changed. Like, the assurance that I was supposed to do that would not leave me. And I was like, fine. And so I wake up the next day and I call my brothers, and I tell them that I'm coming to their church, and they are like, oh, yep, oh, okay, cool. They're like as surprised as the pastor and preacher when I walk in that next day. Because what you don't know about the story is that I'd actually been to their church before. Like, they had invited me and things, and I I was unwelcomed quite quickly, and this is why. They expressed things that I could not agree with. One, for example, was that no one could know the power of like healing and miracles of the presence of God, unless they were anointed by them, the people at the church, because they were apostles. And I was
Oh,
like, I have died and come back to life, so I don't think that that's correct. But and I am as sassy as they come, so like I made sure that they knew, and obviously, so when I walked up to the pastor and preacher that day, I was like, so this is what I was told, to go before a church and have them pray over me. So you can do it or not. And they tentatively agreed, and I was in the very front pew, and I just sat there. Girl, I was so exhausted. I literally had like both of my hands on both sides of my knees, and I just like my head hung, and I just listened to the very loud, very long worship songs they had. And so about halfway through the very first one, the pastor's wife got up and she walked over with all the people that she had anointed. I don't know what they called them. And they all laid hands on me, and some were singing, some were speaking in tongues, some were praying, and it was very powerful. And so anyway, I sat there and they were praying over me, and the longer they stayed, the harder I cried because nothing was happening. And I remember just tears falling into my lap. And I could feel them through my jeans. And eventually they left me just crying there. And I had two hands on me. One I knew was my friend Chris, was so dear to me, and then a small one, like a very small one on the middle of my back. And I remember just kind of crying to a point and then going back inside to that dwelling place. And I remember saying to the divine, I said, I still know you're good. I still know you're good. Even though this didn't work, I still know you're good. And I know the road I have chosen. I know the road that I'm going to walk. And I'm okay with it, because with you, I can face anything. And I know that. So whatever your will is, I accept. And the moment I accept left my lips, a palm width beam of power came from that hand on my back, like beeline through my body, through my torso, split into two, covered both breast lumps, and hovered there for songs. For songs. And I remember my eyes were closed and nothing else mattered. The world completely disappeared. My mind's eye was completely focused on what was happening. Like that beam of power was white light, and it pulsed, and it was moving in me, doing something. And after a while, it dissipated into me. It didn't disappear. It dissipated into me. It's like when it returned to something. And I remember coming back into a consciousness, because it was just so overwhelming. I was just completely captivated by it. And I remember as I was coming to, my lips were moving, my mouth was moving, but I didn't know what I was saying. And I remember when I came to full reality, I kept repeating, I accept this, I accept this, I accept this, just over and over again. And I settled, and as I opened my eyes and kind of took things in, a second wave of shock hit me, because nothing had changed. Like, people were still singing, the hands were still on me. No one knew what had happened. And so I reached over and I took the hand that was on my back, and I brought them around the pew, and I sat them next to me. And I look at them, and it was a 13-year-old girl. And everything made sense. Everything lined up. Looking at her, and I was like, her faith, her childlike faith met my childlike faith, and a miracle happened. And looking at her, I remember so many times some monumental thing happened, like premonitions or healings or whatnot, and I had no one to speak life into me. I had no one there. And so I looked at her and I said, honey, I am going to tell you something that may be hard for you to understand and even harder for you to believe. But I believe what they, pointing at the pastor and preacher, would call God, but what I would call love, chose you to heal me of cancer, to help heal me of cancer today. And I want you to understand just that's how powerful you and love are together. And I want you to never forget that. And it was the next day, Monday, where I had all my tests, and I was one of the first ones in. It was very early. And so I went there with someone who was a friend at the time, and I was to get a 3D mammogram, an ultrasound, and a lumpectomy, right? To take everything they find, because that's why they do the 3D mammogram, which misses nothing, and then the ultrasound just for backup, and then they just take everything out. And so I go into the mammogram room, and there was a nurse in the back, and she was a seasoned nurse. She had glasses on, and she was like, she had like this chart, and she was like flipping through it, like she was trying to find something, and then she would like look on the desk, and she looked frustrated, and she was so engrossed with what she was doing. I had to kind of clear my throat to get her attention. And so I do so, and she like looks up over her glass, like she looks over her glasses at me, and she says, welcome in. Where are your breast lumps? And I take a second, probably more than a second, and I'm like, I don't have and I just kind of stumble over my words because I'm in shock. One, why is she asking me to do her job? And two, oh my God, they lost my breast. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they have, like, I'm freaking out. And so anyway, I was like, well, they were here and here, and I know they made measurements, and like they had sizes, and they literally had tape, like they measure like how far it was for certain places and whatnot. And I know they noted it. I saw it on the chart. And so anyway, she stopped me, and she was like, okay, we're just gonna scan everything then. Um, and so she did. And I left the room, and I waited in the waiting room maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I can't really remember. And I went back to the ultrasound room, and there was a table, an ultrasound machine, and then a nurse in the back. Again, she looked seasoned, and she had a chart in her hand again. And she was looking at the chart, and then she was looking at a screen, and she was like pinching it, and like she was like unpinching it, and she was like rolling through things or whatnot. And she was so engrossed in it, I again had to like clear my throat to get her attention. And she whirled around, leaned around the ultrasound machine, and she said, oh, welcome in. Where are your breast lumps? And I had time, girlfriend, to process between that waiting room, that experience, and where I stood in front of her. And so I am the person, I am as sweet as the day is long. But if I think that your incompetence is going to put me or someone else I love in danger, you're real literal. And so I was like, I don't know, but that's your job. So I'm going to need you to do your job. Can't do your job for you. But I do know this. You have a 3D mammogram in front of you. I know that's what that is. And I know that you can see any particle of cancer in there. That's what they're there for. I was told that multiple times at the other clinic I was at. And it was in the chart when I left that place. And so I'm going to need you to do your job, find them, because I can't. And rightfully so, she was upset. And so she snapped that chart back together, and she's like, well, we're going to scan everything. And by this time, I'm like, you should probably do that anyway. But so she did, a little bit too enthusiastically, in my personal opinion. And as she was leaving the room, she kind of threw over her shoulder. She's like, okay, the doctor's going to be in to finalize everything. And what that meant is that they were going to poke me with a needle, which I do not like, to numb an area on a very sensitive part of my body. And they're going to use a scalpel to cut me open. Again, not something I'm excited about. To take something out, send it off, and get information on those. And so anyway, I'm trying to prep for that. And then I'm like low-key irritated at these people, because I'm like, okay, obviously they're incompetent. And so I'm sitting there, and maybe 5-10 minutes again, like maybe less than that. This doctor whirls into the room, short, silver-haired fellow with a coat on, introduces himself, and says hello to me. And I have no time to say anything before he leans in, pats my left knee, and says, thank you for coming in. We'll see you when you're 40. And tries to exit the room. Now, I lose my mind. I jump off that table. I stop that man dead center. I spin him around, and I literally physically shake him. And I'm like, listen, I have no idea what's going on here. I do not know if it is incompetency or something's broken, but you have lost my breast lumps. And so you, sir, are going to poke around. You're going to feel them. You're going to find them. You're going to take them out. You're going to send them off, and you're going to tell me I don't have breast cancer. Thanks. And he sits there and looks at me in complete shock until he wiggles out and he takes my shoulders too and just wiggles me a little bit. And he was like, ma'am, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you're right. We have done every test that we possibly can to find anything. And I assure you, there are no lumps. There's nothing to find. And he leaves the room. And I sit there staring at where he was for, I honestly have no idea, but it is a long time. And my knees kind of give out and I stumble back and I sit down on the table of the ultrasound machine. And I know what I'm about to do. And my hands are shaking as I lift that gown and I place my hands where that breast lump was that was so far out, that was so tangible that I could feel it with that nurse, the doctor, the nurse, and I felt it. I knew where it was. And I hovered over it for just a little bit, absolutely terrified. And I remember pushing down, and a pinky width digit in my rib cage and a bruise sensation was the only evidence anything was ever there. And from that day on, I was forever changed. I was never the same. So
That is amazing. Another beautiful story of releasing the control that most of us do have or struggle with. I know that at least myself, I do.
mm,
Sometimes as humans, we want to control the outcomes and basically every situation, let alone your situation, cancer, a very, very violent cancer.
so before it, I had full evidence of what cancer was going to do to me. I
Mhm.
mean, my grandparents, my parents, and now me. I'm at 32 with the minute that I think I knew something was afoot instinctively, innately. The first phone call from my mother, and then it was confirmed. You know what I'm saying? It was like a kind of a slow build up. So I, what I felt that day in that doctor's office was terror. It wasn't anxiety. It was absolute terror because I knew. Then that's why I think the nurse did that, what she did, and she didn't have to. It was such a beautiful addition. So she could just tell I was on an edge and I needed that. And so that's why I knew that if it was bilateral, it had spread. I knew that the gene mutation was just I knew the road I was going in. So that's why I think I just was like, I'm okay with whatever happens, and whatever that is, it's probably going to be me going to see love a lot sooner. And so, but afterwards, there is, again, so there's truth in every religion, and I will say this about the Christian religion: there is truth, love's truth in everything, right? And one of the truths that I took away from this story was when there were miracles that were done in the biblical time, like by Jesus. The people that had the miracles done to them, they were overwhelmed. They could not tell people. That was me. I was a walking billboard. I was a walking Mary. Like, I was like running around telling everybody at like natural grocers. Okay. Like, I was just
Yeah.
like nothing mattered. It was like it broke it like challenged what the world says is possible in every way, shape, and form. And so my faith, unshakable. Like, my faith, not like I didn't have faith and trust in the divine before, but this is like rock solid, like just like stone upon stone on a solid foundation. So even to this day, like I I've told this story in front of, actually, I spoke about this today. I told the story in front of a doctor once, and it was I spoke at the international conference of near-death experiences last year. I was actually one of the speakers, and there was a doctor there, and he was so wonderful. There were people asking me questions after I spoke and things like that, and he piped up. He was like, crying. It was so beautiful. He was like, I'm a gynecologist, and I see um, things every day. And he said, I see why you would call your book Love's Miracles and the Misery, because he said, I see when miracles happen on a daily basis. He's like, I see it all the time. And he's like, people in my industry would deny it, but he's like, thank you for coming out and saying this. Thank you for giving us something to challenge, because like myself, I see this every day. And he said he cannot deny how his faith has changed into something very tangible, and seeing something like he's seen, but equate it to what I've been through. So yeah, no, I there's a woman named Louise Hay, and she also had she has books like called Heal Your Life and things like that. But she's like, she equates a situation like mine to this. She says it may happen that others it's hard to say, because it's hard to say. It's like this gene mutation, this statistic may be, but it's not for me, obviously, right? That's something that I can claim, and I believe, others can as well. But like, that's just, I mean, it's just not for me. And I've done a lot of research on, we can get to the science of it later, but a lot of research on gene mutations, and how there's miracles in that too. So
Right now in the world, there are many people dealing with cancer, dealing with loved one, family members, friends
mm,
that might be battling cancer. Could be terminal cancer. Maybe other people just got their diagnostics and they're going through the emotional turmoil that you went through at the beginning.
right.
What advice would you give them to like not lose hope and release control?
Oh my gosh, yes. So thank you for asking that question. It's a beautiful one, and I'm always so humbled to answer it. So first off, I can understand the absolute. I mean, it's terror. Like, sometimes it's just terror that you face, and whatnot. I know what it's like to lose loved ones to this, and but I can only speak to what I know and what I've seen other people. There are so many avenues to healing your body and healing your life that I don't want anyone to give up, right? Um, Maybe challenge what is being said. Like, look for what's inside first. Like, I went inside and I was like, okay, cool. I could have approached this a natural way. I could have approached it, however, but like, it was, everyone's journey is different. And I've seen people heal like stage 4 cancer with turkey tail mushrooms. I've seen people heal cancer by earthing. Like, people will go in the country and just walk barefoot, be in nature, breath work and whatnot, or just literal straight up energy healing, like very similar to what I did. So the ability to tap into the the life force, the love that we have, what people call the Holy Spirit, and using that power within to move the energy or the vibration, whatever you want to call it, our spirit, our soul, and to remake it. So in my situation, what I akin this, if I was speaking to a Christian, someone who knew the Bible, right? There was the story of how the Holy Spirit hovered over the waters of the earth and made it. It's like that, right? And so I don't want anyone to give up. I want you, if it feels right to you, to walk through certain situations or certain options, do it. But I will say this, that like, your mindset and your heart set matters. Like, it really matters. And having a support system around you with grounded positivity and a safe place to process what you're going through is very, very important. And I had that through the spirit, but some people are blessed with loved ones to go through that, right? Or like family members or significant others or whatnot, or friends, no matter what, a solid, grounded support system that is non-judgmental, that's with you. Because I personally I believe in miracles. Like I believe in the miracle of healing through energy work and like energy work, breath work, foods, things like that. Like I believe anything is possible. So I don't want you to give up. I know my story is different, and it's not for everyone, but it doesn't mean you can't be healed from this. It doesn't mean that this is the end, and it doesn't have to be something. Sometimes it cripples people to go through this because they can't shake the fear mentality that it's going to ruin everything or it's going to be you know what I'm saying, um, because I was terrified in those times. I was not this, it wasn't like a hippy dippy kind of thing. Like I was feeling real emotions, but tapping into your dwelling place and following that no matter what is the advice I would give anyone, because in my personal opinion you can't go wrong, and having a support system to support that, that's really important. So I'm sending everyone out there that's going through that so much love and so much encouragement, and that we really are in this together. And I know you and I just instinctively would send those people like encouragement. So that's what I'm doing right now for you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you again. A lot of us need words of encouragement because many people, we're busy, we're going through things, the state of the world, everything that's going on right now. So we need as many positive vibes as we can get.
Yeah.
I do believe that we create our own world, and if we
Mm-hmm.
project light, that's what we're going to receive back. And I
Mm.
would also recommend that to people going through hardships and going through things that may seem like they will not be able to make it out the other end, but they will. Just hang in there.
Yeah,
Don't lose hope.
absolutely.
Don't lose hope.
Yes.
Once I was in a meditation in back in 2012, all of a sudden I saw myself meditating, and I was in a circle, but that circle was like a tornado. And then my
Oh,
spirit guide was telling me, you are in the middle of a storm. You're already halfway through. Why would you stop there? Just keep going. You're already halfway out.
oh,
So that is basically the message that I do give to, people going through different situations
yes.
right now. Yeah,
Mm, that's beautiful.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, so going back to your NDE and your healing experience,
Mhm.
um, do you think that that was something that was chosen pre-birth, or like it was just handed out to you? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, what your beliefs are?
Yeah, for sure. I love that so much. So I actually haven't done a lot of research on like past lives or whatnot, or like pre-birth or whatnot. But I do know in my near-death experience, it was as if in that space of light and dark, life and death, it was almost like it was where light existed, light and love, and life itself, and then the space where that can be created, or the space that's held for life, like this, like where we are, like our galaxy that we're on. We forget we're on a planet running around in the middle of a galaxy. That's crazy. Um, but it was like it was pre that, and so it was almost like love was telling me I always was, always will be, and no matter what I is created, no matter what is, I will always be what holds it all together, right? And so to that point, if there was ever, I always say this, if there was ever a discussion, like let's say, um, maybe I can meditate on this and have a better answer next time we talk. But if there ever was like a discussion, like, okay, so Kara, you're gonna go to Earth and you can pick any, like, you're gonna like go through all of this stuff and whatnot, or like you can come back 1,000 times and learn all these lessons or whatever. I know for a fact, knowing myself, like who I am as like a soul person, I'm like, listen, I'm not gonna come back here 1,000 times. You're gonna put me on this earth one time, and I'm gonna get all my lessons done. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna be like running around with my unicorns in heaven, or like in the afterlife, like in the world that I made. Like, I'm not coming back here again. I'm gonna be with all the animals I've ever loved on this planet. Like, I had like no way. Like, if I had to choose, like, I don't think I would. Like, I have had such an amazing. Like, I love my life. I do. I absolutely. I love it. And as awoke as I was as a kid, I remember my prayers, girl. Like, I remember me being like, you cannot give me, I spoke to the divine. Like, like, you better not give me this boring life. We're going to do this life together. Don't you give me this boring life, like whatever. And I was like screaming at the divine, giving me like, trying to get him to heal me from cancer or tell me what to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't imagine me being like, okay, I'll take this. Like, I'll take this life. Like, if you are, you better give it to me at one time. And I guarantee you that's exactly what happened. Like, I'll be like, hey, divine, what's this? What's this life? Well done. I'm not doing it again. Well done.
Yep.
So I don't know. I've had enough
One chance,
experiences.
give it to me hard, and that's it.
And doing it again.
Exactly. I'm not doing it again. So let me learn it.
No. Learned.
Exactly. Now, so how do you continue to live with the knowledge and experience that you have gained from your experiences?
Oh my gosh. I have, although it was so hard for me growing up, like, again, like I tell this in my book, Love's Miracles and the Misery, like, I wanted to be really raw and real about my experience, because a lot of times, like, people, like the books that I read, it feels so separated, like the miracles and the magic of this world seems so separated from everyday life, that I wanted to integrate like the miracles and the misery in it. And because it, like, that's life, that's what real miracles and magic look like. They are so intertwined and right next to just the real, tangible, sometimes misery of this world. And so I know, because of all of those, I call them fingerprints of the divine, all the time that it's ever showed up, I've ever had this experiences, I know um, that like nothing can shake me. I love my life. I love like who I am. I love the way that I'm made, and I love the fact we're in this amazing time in human consciousness that everything is shifting. Like, our conversation would not have happened, like you said, what, 10, 15, even 20 years ago. Like, that's crazy town. Like, that they're like, no, absolutely not. Um because I mean, I believe that people like us, like your spiritual experience and my spiritual experiences, um, are happening, because it's not like they haven't happened before, but we're the generation that gets to change humanity's direction, and I think that's what's kind of happening now. And so I think, I'm kind of shifting a little bit, but to your point, um, I handle things, like really hard things, really, really well. So like, this is a cakewalk to me, kind of thing. But I think it's because um, we as like human beings are healing and we're changing the world. And so like, I'm here for it, man. Like, I'm loving life. I love the fact I get to do these kind of podcasts and meet people like you, and like, we've had similar spiritual experiences and we know truths, and that's how I that's how I can face the world, I think, with such joy. Because if I had to keep going the way that the world was going, not being able to talk about it and just feeling so alone in the world. Maybe that's why, now that I'm kind of having an epiphany, maybe that's why I was totally okay with just kind of going, because I knew my truth, like our truth, like that there's something else out there, and that like spirit is real, and like we are challenging what the world says is possible, healing, and like, you know, it's new direction. I think that's probably why I was okay with just kind of like ducking out, because I mean, like I knew my lessons, like this world's just going to be what it is and it's not going to understand me, and that's cool. I just would rather be with love, you know, kind of thing. But I mean, I believe I'm here for a reason. Obviously, like I should have been dead about 7 times over. So like,
Right.
I mean, right, there you go. And so I am, I remember that every time anything happens, like I'm thrilled to be here. Like I am so thrilled, and to to find my people. Like I finally feel like I'm finding my people, and we're changing the world. So I'm just excited every
Finding your
day.
tribe. That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. So, what advice would you give to those seeking to connect with their own sense of the divine or inner love?
Oh, it is inside, man. And it like it wants you just as much as you want it, because like once you find it, once you really understand, it's so much a part of you. I remember speaking to a woman in in a in a session. She was um spiritual teacher, and I was like, I finally got to her and I was like, listen, I'm trying to write this book and I'm trying to describe the divine, and she's like, okay, well, what's the problem? I was like, I can't separate it from me. I can't separate myself from the divine. So I don't know how to explain it. And she's like, explain it like that. That's what it is. Right. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And so there's so much deconstruction from religion right now, we are now able to open up ourselves to know, okay, so if the divine is in me and it's part of me, then that's me too, you know, kind of thing. Like, and then we explore that. And so if we can't logically get there, right? Um, I love breath work. I love meditation. You and I, obviously, like we know that you were in a meditation retreat when you had your spiritual experience. I love that. I do not think people have to die to have experiences like mine, or like they're deep and tangible and real. Obviously. Um, People have had experiences with the divine through safe guidance. Like they've had journeys before, and that's not for everyone. But if it calls to you, hey, do it legally. Um, so I love telling people to tap into what's inside of them and follow it. And if you are having a hard time tapping into like what's inside, challenge it. Like literally go alone. If meditation or sitting there in stillness like isn't working, um I love challenging the divine. I'm like, if I don't see a blue feather today, you're not real. And you know, like it's just silly stuff like that. Because I remember doing that as a kid. Like I was like, you better be real. If you're not real, you better prove yourself. Like that's the kind of stuff. Like everyone else was like, okay, they were like obedient and stuff like that. I was like, you better prove yourself, or I'm not following you. Like that. Like that's the sass. That's the sass. Like you know that I'm a sassy. So like yeah, like whatever it is like that speaks to you. Like I used to speak to the moon, homie. Like let's just be real honest. Like just follow that inside, and it will come to you. Ask, seek, and you will find. It will find you, and it will be this beautiful, unique relationship where it could be like animals, like seeing certain animals that like speak to you, or like seeing feathers, or like pennies, or like numbers. Like I'm a numbers person, like, or literally like in ridiculous ways. Like I remember sharing in my book, there was a time where 4 different people came up to me and said the same exact darn thing to me over and over and over and over and over again. And I was like, fine, fine. I get it? You want me to talk to you? Okay, like kind of thing. So like it's just think of it as play. Like think of it as this fun little like journey you get to go on, and you may find yourself a completely different person, and embrace that, because that's what we want. We want to see you, the real you.
And I
Like,
would like to add to that, not to make it so difficult. Like
oh
we
yeah,
tend to make things more like, oh my God, I want to find the love within me. I want to feel this. I want to feel that way. I want to connect to God. What do I have to do? What I need to go and,
yeah.
to a temple, meditate. Just something as simple as a walk your dog, walk in the neighborhood, a walk in the woods, listen to the birds, feel the breeze in your face, things like that,
Mm,
things that bring you joy in your heart. Follow that and do more of that.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's not that difficult. It
Yeah.
may sound like it's very challenging, like, oh my God, who am I? It's the divine. How's the divine gonna connect to me? But we'd be surprised. We'd be surprised. Like
Heck yeah.
that is always there waiting for us to reach our hand. And they always have their hands open. The divine always
Mm-hmm.
have their hand open waiting for us. So that's what
That's
I
true.
think.
I
100%.
love that.
Yeah. So, what are your future goals in sharing your story and helping others through your experiences?
I want people to challenge what the world says is possible, man. Like, I want them to challenge what the world says is possible, and go within to develop that relationship with divine and find a life of freedom. I'm hoping that they can find resilience in themselves, because I share my story and things like that in my book, but also like um, that they challenge what the world says is possible. So resilience, challenging what the world says is possible with like the near death experience and the premonitions and the healings and things like that. And but they're always going inside to do so, and that they never give up hope, and that trusting the divine, and having that faith, building that faith up, is what is going to allow the love to be unhindered and undistracted, because what we all want is a life of freedom. Like that's what we want. We want a life of joy, like you were talking about, following that joy. What I would like people to do is to a renewed hope that anything is possible. And even if it's small, like even if they just want to buy a house or get a garden going and have their kids and their dogs and whatnot, or they're like, I want this big business, um, uh, and but I don't have any money, or like I don't know how to do it, or like whatever they're facing, or if it's a health hindrance, I want them to just keep going. I want them to never give up. I want to inspire and encourage people that self love is always first and foremost the answer. And that I want to remind them that they are so special, that they are unequivocally and unrelentingly special, and that this life is meant to be lived to the fullest no matter what we face, and not to fear um, death or what comes after, because that I feel like controls a lot of what we do. And so if they can understand that they can get through anything with resilience, through the power within, and that not to fear, live in fear, but live in love and follow that joy, I'm hoping that they're going to see that and have a renewed inspiration and encouragement to just live their best lives.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much for that. You mentioned your book. What is the name of your book, and where can people find it?
It is called Love's Miracles and the Misery. I wish I had one right now. It is called Love's Miracles and the Misery, and
Hmm.
you can get it off Amazon. all both on Kindle or paperback. You can also visit my website at karamarlene.com. There's a link right on the webpage. There's also, if you send me your email address, there's like a little pop-up window on my website. You get a free mindfulness book as well. So you'll have my book and then a mindfulness book in days kind of thing.
Perfect.
So yeah,
All right. So I'll link your information here in the show notes.
thank
So it'll
you.
be very easy. So what else do you got going on that you would like for us to know about?
Well, I'm starting my second book, which is awesome. I was just talking to a friend of mine, a spiritual guide as well, and I will be attending the Near Death Experience, the International Association of Near Death Experiences conference. It's in August, and it's going to be amazing. And I have a YouTube that I started. I am on TikTok. But I've got a lot of things cooking. So you can always keep up with what's going on by going to my website and subscribing. I have it's an email list. I send out like a blog post like once monthly because I don't want to overwhelm anyone with emails because we all know that that's irritating. But that's really a way to keep up. But thank you for asking about that.
Thank you. So before we leave, do you have any last words for our audience?
I'm so glad you're here. I just I love people. And this is the first time in my life I can like share that like unbridled love. So I couldn't do it as a kid. And I was so busy in, my 20s and going through my 30s, man, like that was just crazy town. But I legitimately like I get giddy like thinking about how I still have that wellspring of just giddy joy that like y'all are here. Like I want you all to be like my pen pals. I am just, if you are here searching for spiritual guidance and truth and finding your path and on your hero's journey, like this is what life's about. This is what life's about. Like it's not about like getting rich and whatnot. Like good for you if you do, that's great. But like you're gonna enjoy life so much more in a deeper, wider, more tangible level when you're on your hero's journey and you're not distracted from it. Like you're knowing who you truly are, what life's really about, and you're now sharing it with like this amazing group of people like you, this beautiful host, and then everybody else is watching. I am so glad that you are here. I'm so because I have been waiting for you for a long time. Like I've been waiting for the world to change for a long time, and I am so freaking grateful
I
that
did
it's
too.
here. And I never in my life thought I would ever be in a time like this, and I'm so glad you're with me. So,
Thank you so much for that message and thank you for coming on the show.
oh, you're so welcome. Thank you again so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.